Hey guys, welcome back. It's Shelby, and what I want to do is to start a little series on how to make paper flowers and the different types of paper flowers that you can make out of different types of paper. You can use all sorts of different paper to make different flowers, including crepe paper, tissue paper, regular printer paper, construction paper, and coffee filters. Today's video is going to focus on coffee filters. You can get big stacks of them off Amazon for super cheap. You can get them at your local grocery store. Nothing real special about the ones that I have today. They're just the paper cup kind, not the kind that's kind of sealed into the packet. But yeah, just the kind that open up into a circle. They're made out of what feels like tissue paper. These have little scalloped edges. And basically what I want to spend this video doing is to prep how to color them different ways. So there's several different methods on how to dye coffee filters that you're going to make paper flowers out of. You can use markers, you can use paint, there's just all sorts of different items that you can use and techniques you can use to get different colors and shapes and gradients and variations and just a beautiful, lovely color saturation in the coffee filters. Today, in preparation for the paper flower series that I want to do, I want to go over a couple of those methods just to prep a few coffee filters to use for those videos and also to show you the different methods that you can do to achieve the different looks. So yeah, these are just basic coffee filters that you can get at the grocery store or Amazon. I'll link them below along with my socials if you want to just get a bunch off Amazon and have them delivered to you, because yay, convenience. But yeah, otherwise, let's get going. So here is what we are looking at with the before. It's just a normal coffee filter, nothing super special about it. As I mentioned, it's not the packet kind that are usually flat and have a seam on the bottom. This is the kind that just open up into a little cup shape, and you can get them in giant packets like this one for super cheap. So that is what we are using for today's craft. So I'm starting out just by laying out my coffee filters on some paper plates. This is a super messy craft, so be prepared, and grabbing some markers. For this video, I think I'm just going to focus on what happens when you dye coffee filters with markers using water and alcohol. I've seen both methods online, and I wanted to show what happens and the difference when you use both of them. So I'm going to be making 2 of each type of coffee filter that I make. This one is a purple center and purple outer ring. So one to dip in water, and I'm going to make an identical one to dip in alcohol. This one is going to be a ring around the center. So these are pretty simple ones, a lot of white space and just a little bit of purple accent. By folding the coffee filter in 4ths or 8ths, you can get a nice kind of semi-symmetrical ring, and the marker, if you drag it across slowly enough, will get more than one layer at a time, so it'll save yourself some time. This is not a super fast craft, I gotta be honest. Nothing about it is fast. Not the marker dyeing, which takes way longer than it should. This video is super sped up, and it's still pretty slow. And when you dip them in the water, it takes a while for that to absorb, and then you have to dry them. Like, nothing in this craft is fast. I dedicate a couple hours to a couple days to it, depending on how much you want to babysit it and how much you just want to leave it to do its own thing. Also, it's messy, so just beware. But I'm making 2 identical types of each type of filter that I am dyeing, and I'm going to be making 4 for each, so 8 total. For this one, I wanted more of a color saturation gradient. I'm doing reds, purples, and pinks, and then I'm just doing kind of like the top inch into the middle, center and dead center bullseye. So folding the filters in 4ths really helps a lot because it can get through about 2 layers, and then you just open it up and do the backside of the inner layer. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of struggle. So the last one, I want to do kind of a more precision filter look or flower look. You know how some of the flowers out there are just beautifully white and dotted with different vibrant colors? I'm going to do that with a pink and just put little dots all over these beautiful filters so that I have a beautiful dotted flower. Once we have 2 of those, we are going to lay out all of our filters on plates. Like I said, 1 of each kind. So I'm going to be putting my pinks and reds on one plate and my purples on the other plate. You can put them out, each flower on its own plate, whichever you want to do. But this way is going to help me kind of remember which ones are water and which ones are alcohol. So I'm doing 2 of a kind on each plate, and I'm going to be folding them into those little 8s that you saw. So they're just little cones because I want to dribble the water on the ends of them
and let the water kind of saturate up towards the tips. Same with alcohol. And I'm hoping what that's going to do is drag the color along with it. And so it's going to blend the colors and make it this beautifully saturated, blended out color palette and not look super contrived or markered. So for the dotted one, I'm basically just going to pour the water all over it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the purples. Just start at the tip for these because for this one, I put it in the center and the other one is a ring. So I just want the color to kind of bleed and transfer out and saturate the filter as it will as the water moves through it. For the other filters, we're doing the same thing with rubbing alcohol. This is just basic rubbing alcohol from the grocery store, but I'm going to pour it over the tip of the red one as I did, and then pour it all over the spotted one as I did with the watered one. And then for the purples, we're doing the same thing. We're just going to arrange them in the same way and then pour the alcohol over the tips of the purple one so that it can saturate the filter and drag the color with it and see what happens. Here is an aerial view of what is going on. The water is already softening the colors and blending them together so you have a nice, beautiful, subtle pigment throughout all the colors. And you can see with the alcohol, while it is making the colors more vibrant, they're really not transferring a whole lot. They're not bringing the colors into the plate the way the water is either. You can see that the colors are bleeding into the water. Not so with alcohol. One cool thing you can do while dyeing coffee filters is dye multiples at a time. So basically, as it's dripping water, I'm just putting a stack of coffee filters on a paper plate and putting the saturated filters out over the top to dry. Like I said, this is super messy. You can see my hands are totally stained. What this does is it's going to allow some of that color transfer to stain the lower layers so that it's not so time intensive to do every single one. They're not all going to look the same. They're not all going to look like the top layer. Less and less colored liquid is going to leak through with each layer. But you know what? It gives you a head start and not each flower is colored the same. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You just get some color on them and it's going to look beautiful. So I poured the excess into the most saturated color one. It's just going to kind of go through the center. These are the alcohol flowers. You can see they really didn't move much. You can see defined marker strokes, which is fine. More saturated color. I don't think that'll last once they dry, but you can see on the spotted one, it did like soften the edges a little bit, but it just left those beautiful spotted marks. Same with the very saturated one. It didn't even really blend the colors together. But be careful with the alcohol, it still transfers. It'll still bleed on you. You want to be careful with it because you're still going to leave marks everywhere. Here is an aerial view of them all drying. You can definitely see a difference between the alcohol filters and the water filters. And yeah, let's let them dry.
Okay guys, so that is a couple methods on how to dye coffee filters if you want to use them for paper flower making crafts. I'll do a couple close-ups at the end as usual, and thanks so much for joining me this time. I'll see you here again soon. Bye for now.
Okay guys, so here are how the markered coffee filters turned out with the alcohol. You can see it's still a really defined shape where the marker was, but it did kind of soften the edges a little bit, which is nice. This one especially, you can really see that it was dabbed on with markers, which is kind of cool. There was a little bit of color bleeding and transfer. It does soften the edges, but really not by a whole lot, but they turned out pretty good. Conversely, if you head over to the water bled stained ones, whatever you want to call it, this is the original one that looked like this. Very, very different. And these are the underlying layers. So this is a great method, clearly the winner. And it'll also get you multiple layers of variously less and less stained coffee filters so that you can continue to dye projects with it. Like I have literally a whole batch all the way down to the last one that's like barely stained, but it gives you a fair amount of them. This one right here was that one right there. So I'm glad I did both to show you which was which. It really, really blends and bleeds the marker out. So it's a nice smooth gradient. This one did dye a couple more, not a whole lot, just a little bit. But sometimes in flowers it's nice to have them white with just like a touch of color. The purple ones, well, this was touching the red obviously, but they just kind of disperse the color a lot. Like you need a lot of color pigment on it if you're gonna do it with water apparently. I really thought these would last more than they did, but they didn't. So that's good to know. And yeah, those are the differences between dyeing coffee filters with markers dipped in water versus alcohol.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye for now.